Dragon Ballers, if you're looking to buy Dragon Ball Super or One Piece sealed product, make sure to get 5% off using my link to Mystic TCG down in the description. You can also sell cards to them using their Facebook link, which is also down in the description. Yo, what's going on, Dragon Ballers? Welcome back to another video. We are back into set 20 Power Absorb Reveals, and today we're talking about what is probably the most hyped deck coming out of the set. Now, we don't have all the colors and all the themes yet, but this leader and this deck have a lot of people talking, and for good reason. It seems really insane. So we're gonna go into the Android 21 stuff in today's video. If you guys are new here, make sure to subscribe, hit that bell so you never miss a video, and let's jump right on in. So me myself, I'm very excited for new Android 21 support. If you guys remember, I want to say back in the set 8 or 9 days, I did a lot of Android 21 content. I was playing different builds of the deck, and the deck was pretty much built to be this ramp blue-green deck, but we found some mid-range ways to play it with like some old Zamasu support. It was really cool. But anyways, this is a bit of a different theme. It still focuses on ramp, but in a bit of a different and honestly very interesting way. All right, so let's start with the leader. We have Android 21 permanent. You can't activate extras, and during your turn you can't use skills to play battle cards. Now that permanent is kind of crazy, like no D-Magic, no Sensu Bean, nothing like that. I think it's pretty much there just to prevent you from using Android 21 Scheme, which theoretically in this deck you could cast as early as turn 3, although it is a 4-cost extra card, and obviously we know that like extra cards that you have to use offensively generally aren't that good because you can't combo with them. But in this deck, it actually might be pretty insane if you see what the rest of the deck does later on. But anyways, auto, if you have an Android 21 Z battle card in play at the end of your turn, switch one of your blue energy to active mode, so more of that energy manipulation that 21 is known for. Activate main once per turn, add 1 card from your life to your hand, look at the top 5 cards of your deck, add up to 1 blue Android card among them to your hand, shuffle your deck, and this card gets plus 5k for the turn. So just a straight up power boost, which is great. Searching any Android that is not specifically tied to a cost is also insane. So we're looking at being able to search different secret rares now. And then we have Awaken, replace 4 or less, draw 1 card, and switch one of your energy to active mode. So interesting, we're steering away from the typical Awaken and go down to 6 life, although this leader does have built-in life taking ability, so that's obviously going to be pretty consistent to get yourself down to 4 life. Android 21, the nature of evil. We have permanent. During your turn, you can't use skills to play battle cards. So that is the one shared permanent across the awakened and unawakened side of the leader. So one of the best cards in blue right now, Piccolo the Infiltrator. Not really super playable in this deck because both of its effects are playing cards by skills, and you can't do that during your turn. So definitely an interesting deck building thing there, but we'll see what the rest of the deck entails. Permanent. When paying energy costs for your Android 21 cards, you can use your Android 21 Z battle cards and your opponent's battle cards and unisons as energy. So this deck takes the term Mana Dork and just takes it to the extreme. You can use your own Android 21 Z battle cards as well as your opponent's battle cards and unisons. Now this is really the axis that this deck leans on as to whether or not it'll be good or not, because you come across different situations like, is my opponent even playing a deck that plays a lot of battle cards? Does my opponent even play a unison? If they just attack with everything, do I get less energy during their turn or my turn? You know, this game has a ton of removal nowadays coming into set 20, so do I hold off on using certain pieces of removal to make sure I have energy on my opponent's board? This deck does have ways though to kind of force your opponent into having cards, and we'll see some more of that later. But anyways, this effect is absolutely hilarious. Activate main once per turn, draw a card, and choose up to 3 of your opponent's battle cards and or unisons ignoring barrier, and switch them to active mode. So you basically get to take 3 of your opponent's cards, turn them active, and use those as energy. So that does help you play around the issue of your opponent just turning their cards sideways so you can't use them as energy. Now there's another really important thing we want to talk about here, because as far as like Mana Dorks have been concerned, the only one in the game really is the Weskai Majin Defier, and we know that card counts as blue energy. We also know that you cannot use those cards for skill costs, which seems to be the same thing here, because this specifically notes paying energy costs. So it doesn't seem like you can use those things to pay for skill costs, although I don't think that's a big deal in 21 specifically from the cards that I remember. But yeah, important to note. And besides that, the cards that you tap will tap for whatever color they are. So if your opponent has, let's say, green battle cards, they'll tap for green energy, which in this deck can be relevant. But if you're up against like a black, a yellow, or a red deck, you might only be getting non-specific energy costs, which is probably one of the ways they meant to balance this deck, because yeah, if some of the cards in this deck could be used for pretty much 0, then we'd be in a pretty weird spot. But yeah, the leader looks really strong. Again, it just kind of depends on how stuff is going to go on your opponent's board and how you can kind of manipulate that. But let's read more of the cards. All right, so firstly, we have a negate for the deck. We have Unstoppable Technique, 1 cost counterattack. If your leader is a blue Android card, negate the attack, switch one of your blue energy to active mode. Additionally, at the end of the turn, play one clone token with 10,000 power in your opponent's battle area. So we see the revisiting of the clone token mechanic, which is another way you're gonna be able to basically force your opponent into ramping you, because your opponent can't combo with these clone tokens. So that's gonna mean that your opponent is essentially always gonna have colorless energy for you to use. Again, they can sort of play around that by just turning the token sideways, but like in the case of this card, for example, the token gets played at the end of the turn, which means they won't have the opportunity to attack with it, which is a pretty good thing. Permanent, while your life's at 4 or less and you have a multicolor card in your energy, you can activate this card's counter skill from your hand without paying its energy cost by adding one card from your life to your hand. Now this is super interesting for a bunch of reasons. First of all, this is basically a Whis Coercion that's tied to Android leaders, but also makes the clone token. That's why it's great in this deck. But it also has a pseudo sparking effect. It's more similar to the counter plays we had from like set 8 or 9, the absolute release ball being the blue example, where if you're at 4 or less and you have the multicolor in your energy, you can use them for free by taking the life. Very same effect there. But yeah, this almost makes us think, like, is D-Magic getting hit going into set 20? I don't know. I mean, it's a possibility, and you just leave the fact that only Android blue leaders can have like a free sort of Whis Coercion, and then other blue decks have to go back to Whis Coercion. I don't know, that's just me totally speculating, but it would be kind of interesting if that was the case, because I mean, this one you do have the upside of playing the clone token, but in other Android decks like Android 16, for example, you would never play this over D-Magic, right? So just something I've been thinking about. But anyways, we have the Z battle cards, which, remember, in this deck can be used as energy. We have Android 21 in the name of peace. 2 cost, 1 Z energy, unique critical, Z stack 1 blue battle cards. That is just so funny. So any blue battle card in your Z deck can go under this, which just reads incredibly broken, but we'll see what this card's able to do with those things. Permanent, while there are no cards under this card gets minus 5,000 power. When this card's played, add up to 1 card from life to your hand, and then auto for a blue. If your leader's a blue A21 card at the start of your opponent's main phase, play up to 1 blue Android Z battle card with energy cost of 4 or less from under this card. Now remember, the Z battle cards can be used as energy, so you're basically just getting more energy during your opponent's turn, although this costs you an energy, which is kind of weird. And this would be energy you have to pay yourself, because this is going to be a skill cost. Your leader is not going to allow you to pay using your opponent's board for this skill, as far as I am aware. But anyways, let's read up Android 21 in the name of Hunger. 4 drop, 20k, unique blocker, Z stack 2, just battle cards. You can put any battle cards from your Z deck under this card. Permanent, you may choose up to one of your opponent's battle cards when choosing cards for this card's Z stack conditions. That is actually a really neat way to use Z stack as like a form of removal. I like that quite a bit. When this card's played, you may place the top card of your deck in your energy in rest mode, so you're getting even more energy ramp there. And then choose one of your opponent's battle cards and place it at the bottom of the owner's deck. Activate main once per turn. Choose 1 keyword skill on a card placed under this card, and this card gains that skill until the end of your opponent's next turn. So 1 card you could always throw under this is 5 cost Vegito in the Z deck, which will give this thing inherent triple strike if you wanted to go that route. But yeah, just a really interesting set of cards, and the way that these things give you energy, but also like costing you energy, but also like hard ramping you, because you can look at the cards in your opponent's board as like a soft ramp, because things can happen to those cards that essentially mean you sort of lose energy in the long run. But this 21 in the name of Hunger is just straight up giving you an energy, which is just really, really cool for how the deck's going to work out, and one of the reasons why the deck seems incredibly strong. But now let's read some of the main deck battle cards. We start off with Android 21 Wavering Will. This is a 4 cost counterplay. Keep in mind 3 specific blue, so it's going to be difficult to use your opponent's board to pay for this unless they are also playing blue battle cards. Critical blocker, auto when this card's played, choose 1. You can either, if it's your turn, choose one of your opponent's battle cards and place it at the bottom of the owner's deck, and at the end of the turn, switch this card to active mode for the blocker aspect, or if it's your opponent's turn, draw 1 card. A pretty weird counterplay. You can't actually use this for counterplay on your own turn, not that you would really need to typically, but I guess if you just have extra energy to spare, like if your opponent has a ton of battle cards and you're in a blue matchup, I guess this is just a draw card, which is interesting. But yeah, let's read some of the other cards. Android 21 full power counter. We have a 4 cost 25k, pretty big attacking stat for a 4 cost, but it is a super rare after all. So counter attack, play this card. It is also a double striker. Permanent, if your leader is a blue Android card, negate this card's energy exhaust in all areas. In general, the blue-green Android archetype just has a ton of cards that negate energy exhaust, so that's one thing to note. But anyways, when this card's played, choose one of your opponent's battle cards, ignoring barrier, and place it in the owner's drop, and your opponent can't attack with non-leader cards for the turn unless they place 1 card from their hand and Z energy in their owner's drop each time. So again, a few things with this. 1, in most matchups, this is probably going to cost you 3, and you'll tap one of your opponent's battle cards to make that happen. But if your opponent's playing a blue-green or, you know, blue or green deck, you can theoretically play this for 0 if they have enough battle cards, but I'm sure they'll play around it in such a way that, you know, you'll be prevented from doing that if they're somewhat competent of a player. But just look at what this card does. Like, kill something ignoring barrier, and it's a pseudo floodgate, like a Gohan Baby's minion, or even like the new Android 17 Defending Friends, but it also has an added Z energy cost, and not every deck is great at making Z energy, so a lot of decks and a lot of players are just not gonna be able to attack once this thing hits the board if they weren't able to make Z energy throughout the rest of the game. That is a very interesting defensive capability of this card that is probably going to shut off a lot of turns, and it being a 4-drop, it being a 25k, makes it all the more difficult to actually counterplay this card. So you're looking at things like counters or I don't know, other sorts of specific counter plays that actually do hit this thing. But anyways, Android 21 Bewitching Battler. We have a 5-cost 25k unique double strike blocker and revive. So we're actually bringing the revive mechanic back, which has typically not been great because it costs you cards from your hand being discarded, but this has a permanent that says you can activate this card's revive skill from your drop without paying its skill cost by removing 1 clone token in your opponent's battle area from the game instead. So that is a really good way to cheat around the revive mechanic, but that only protects this thing from straight up removal, so only really against green and yellow. You know, blue, red, and black are going to be able to kill this thing without triggering revive. So auto, at the end of your turn, switch this card to active mode and choose one of your opponent's battle cards and place it in the owner's drop. As far as I can tell, you have to cast this for 5 unless you arrival out the 4-cost Android 17, which only really cheats out for 1 less energy. So yeah, I don't know if this card will be too big of a staple in the deck because it is kind of costly, but does seem pretty decent for your green and yellow matchups. Alright, then we have Android 21 Mandatory Gathering. If your leader is an Android card, when this card's played, look at top 5 cards of your deck, add up to 1 blue Android card with energy cost of 5 or less among them to your hand, shuffle your deck, and at the end of your opponent's next turn, play 1 clone token with 10,000 power in your opponent's battle area. So again, that is just straight up ramping you, getting you a clone token in your opponent's battle area. Really, really good stuff. If your leader is a blue Android card, and this card using the combo from your hand, play 1 clone token in your opponent's battle area. So that's a method of actually getting some somewhat immediate ramp, because you just combo it, bam, your opponent has a token, they can't combo it, and now you can just use that for energy, which makes this card like very, very good. Android 21 Total Audacity is a 4-cost 20k with only 2 blue specified cost. Deflect, double strike, auto limit 1. When this card's played, draw 2 cards. At the end of your opponent's next turn, play 1 clone token with 10,000 power in your opponent's battle area. Again, a card that ramps you, and this thing drawing 2 is insane. If you get the opportunity to use 2 of your opponent's cards to play this, it only costs you 2. So it's a Sand Instincts with a body that also ramps you. Like, I don't know what more you could ask for, to be honest. And then Android 21 Ceaseless Despair, a card that many people are looking forward to because it replaces Android 21 Violent Predator as the 8-cost 21 bomb. So let's see if this thing lives up to that card's reputation. We have an 8-drop 25k, deflect, double strike, dual attack, permanent. While your leader is a blue A21 card, reduce the combo cost of this card in your hand by 1. So it is just a free 0-10k. So you might play 4 copies of this just to facilitate arrival shenanigans. When this card's played, choose any number of your opponent's battle cards ignoring barrier and place them in their owner's drops. Auto once per turn. When your opponent activates a counter skill, they discard 2 cards from their hand. At the end of your turn, switch up to 5 of your energy to active mode. There's just so much going on with all these cards, and I know I keep saying it's hilarious because it really just is. Like, it feels like the power level of these cards is just amped up to 1,000. Like, untap 5, if your opponent counters, they pitch 2, which is not an abnormal effect, and then it is just pretty much a total board wipe. This card is incredible. I think it makes Violent Predator proud. No, it doesn't nuke your opponent's energy, but this card is still really, really good. Now I want to talk about some old cards, or not super old, but you get the point. Cards that don't come out in set 20 that are actually usable in this deck for different things. So Pan Glimpse of Talent is very interesting. No, you can't really use Piccolo to fetch this from your deck, but you can play it to your own board and then give your opponent control of it, and you are essentially giving your opponent energy that you can then use. But the problem with this card is it's a 5k combo. Your opponent can just combo it if you don't time it absolutely correctly. So for that reason, I don't think it's all that great, but I wanted to point it out because it is a rather obvious option you can use in this deck. There's also Android 21 A Brilliant Idea. So this is a 3-cost that gives your opponent 2 clone tokens, which you can sort of look at as ramping yourself 2 energy. But it's a bit slow, cost 3, it's maybe a bit too late in the game for certain matchups. I can see some matchups where this thing actually ends up being kind of good because up against your slower decks, you can give your boss battle cards critical, which is going to just wear your opponent's resources down. But yeah, I don't know if this is necessarily the best option. I haven't quite tried this deck yet myself, but it is one that I will experiment with for sure. And then there's Android 13 Neverending Bloodlust. So this is a free play unison you can use in the deck if you choose to. And the cool thing about this is it prevents your opponent from being able to attack with the clone tokens. So that ramp, that quote unquote ramp, is always in active mode. You never have to use your leader effect to restand those tokens. You can restand your opponent's unison, use them for other things. So this might be a mainstay staple in the deck just for that effect alone, possibly. There's also an Android 16 that does a similar thing. That might also be pretty good in the deck as well. We'll have to kind of test that out and see. But yeah, these are some cards I was thinking about. And then, of course, you can always go ahead and just play Android 16 Energy Amplification. I don't think anything in the deck really stops you from doing that. This just straight up ramps you one, and everything in the deck is below 30k or above 35k in terms of SCRs. So this card should be pretty playable in the deck from what I'm seeing. But anyways, guys, what I got for you today, this deck looks insane. I mean, the cards just read crazy. Again, the question always becomes, can it stand up to Crimson? Can it perform in this format? Of course, we'll get a ban list going into set 20, but we don't know how harsh or not so harsh they'll treat the current meta game. You know, it is Afterworld, so maybe we'll get a total nuke of a ban list and just go straight into set 20 kind of with a brand new format. Who knows? We'll see. But anyways, guys, let me in the comments below what you think about this archetype. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.